I had spent my whole life living in the shadow of my sister, Juliana, the woman everyone in the mafia's heir circle adored and protected. She had no idea that I had been reborn. Just like in my previous life, she smiled sweetly and gently, insisting that I pick my fiancé first, pretending to be thoughtful and gracious. However, this time I refused. In my previous life, I naively believed she meant well. I married the man she recommended, Chester Kane, an heir who was said to have been paralyzed after an ambush. I gave up my right to inherit the family, becoming his caretaker, his crutch, the medicine he used to fight loneliness. However, no matter how much warmth I gave him, his heart remained frozen. The truth only came out during my sister's pregnancy celebration. When an assassin from a rival family raised his gun toward her belly, the man who had not stood in years suddenly rose to his feet. He shoved me toward the muzzle of the gun. All 7 bullets tore into my womb. As I collapsed, I saw him pull my sister into his arms, shielding her with his own body and taking the final shot for her. Only then did I understand. He had never been paralyzed. His family had never abandoned him. He pretended to be sick because Juliana's heart belonged to another man, and he refused to be tied to me. "I'm sorry, Tanya," he said. "I lied to you. However, I couldn't let Juliana lose the heir she's carrying. I'll repay what I owe you in our next life." When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my father asked us to choose our marriage partners. This time I chose no one. Yet back then, they were the ones who begged for my love. "Go ahead, sis, you pick first. You're the delicate one, and you need a strong family to have your back." Juliana Larson forced a sweet tone, playing the caring sister just like she did in her previous life. However, her eyes betrayed her, locking onto Seth Rogers, the Rogers family heir, with an affection she could not hide. The word in the mafia circles was that she and Seth had been secretly tangled up for ages. Dad would definitely keep Seth for her. In my previous life, to keep her happy, I picked Chester Kane, even though he was wheelchair-bound. I thought I was being the bigger person, but I walked straight into a living hell. I could still feel those last moments from my previous life. 7 bullets ripped through me, and I had hit the ground, clutching my belly. Chester's medics stormed in but did not even glance my way. They all flocked to Juliana, who was barely scratched. Huddled in Chester's embrace, she quivered. "Chester, it hurts. It's my fault. I shouldn't have ditched the guards just to spite Tanya." The family elders could not stop singing her praises. The sweetest girl, who even hurt, did not blame her sister. She soaked up all the attention, while I lay dying on the cold floor. It was not until I almost bled out that she suddenly remembered me and yelled for the doctors. "Save my sister. What are you waiting for? Go." Her tears sparkled like diamonds in the light. That was when I saw through her act. That was why I laughed when Dad asked me who I wanted. Since Juliana is so thoughtful, I won't hold back. I'll take Seth. "What?" Juliana's smile disappeared as her eyes welled up with tears. "Tanya, you're well aware of my relationship with Seth." Chester's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. Then, my father's hand struck my face with a force that echoed through the room. "Look at yourself. Seth is the heir to the Rogers family. Do you really think someone like you, an illegitimate daughter, could marry him? You know he's fond of your sister, yet you choose him on purpose. Are you trying to drive your sister to her grave?" Blood trickled from the corner of my mouth, yet I could not help but smile. "Father, if you've already decided, why pretend I have a say? Are you worried about being called unfair?" Juliana's lashes quivered as her tears fell in a perfectly timed cascade. "Tanya, don't say that. Father loves you too. How can you accuse him so unjustly?" Amid our quarrel, Chester, confined to his wheelchair, suddenly braced himself on the armrest and stood up. "Don Larson, I propose a business transaction. I'm aware that your arms dealings have hit a rough patch. I'm willing to invest $5 million to assist you, with one condition. You give me your eldest daughter, Juliana's hand in marriage." I glared at Chester, my heart ablaze with disbelief. I never imagined that he, who had pretended to be paralyzed for so long, would choose that moment to stand. He caught my stare, a flicker of remorse in his eyes, before he looked away. My heart skipped a beat. He too had been reborn. So even though he had watched me die with my womb torn apart in our previous life, he still would not allow Juliana to belong to anyone else in this one. He was willing to play his strongest card for it. The moment my father heard the offer of money, his rage vanished, replaced by a gleam of greed in his eyes. He had set his sights on marrying off his daughters to strengthen the family ties. There was no way he would pass up such a golden opportunity. Besides, the Kanes were a force to be reckoned with, far outstripping the Rogers. It was a stroke of luck that they were interested in Juliana. "Fine," Dad said, not missing a beat. "If Chester's head over heels for Juliana, then Tanya, you'll marry Seth." Seth shot to his feet. He sneered with disgust. "You think I'd marry you, Tanya? Come on, look in the mirror. You don't hold a candle to Juliana. Don't make a fool of yourself." Dad's face turned stormy in an instant. "What's that supposed to mean, Seth?" he demanded, voice like ice. "Our families have been tight for ages. My daughter's too good for you? Are you trying to wreck everything? A look of scorn crossed Seth's eyes. Forgive me, Don Larson. However, I'm set on Juliana and no one else. Marrying Tanya? I'd rather die. Juliana turned to me, her face a mask of regret, but her lips twitched with a hidden smirk. Seth, remember my sister risked her health to save you. Even if she's not your favorite, show her some compassion, she cooed, tapping Seth's shoulder with feigned sweetness. If she had not brought it up, the memory would have nearly slipped my mind. Truth is, Seth and I were the same age childhood buddies. When we were 10, he ditched his security detail and pulled me into an adventure that landed us in the clutches of a rival family. I caused a ruckus to draw the pursuers away, giving him a chance to break free and get help. However, by the time he got away, I got captured. They tossed me into the ocean, and by some miracle, I survived, but not without the lasting scars of illness from the freezing ordeal. Seth's eyes warmed as he looked at my sister, Juliana. I'll never forget that day. If you hadn't realized we were missing and told Dad in time, I'd be 6 feet under by now. You're my hero, Juliana. He then shot me a venomous look. If you hadn't stuck around, playing the I saved your life card, I would have made Juliana my wife a long time ago. A smug smile crept onto Juliana's face, but she quickly hid it by snuggling into Seth's arms. I bit back my anger and said icily, if my dear sister loves Seth so much, yet can't stop mooning over Chester, maybe she should just marry them both. Juliana's face turned beet red, like I would hit a nerve. Tanya, how can you say such a thing? If they both married me, who'd even look your way? What if I told you I don't want either of them? I rose slowly, my voice steady. Both men looked at me. Seth's eyes screamed in your dreams, while Chester's gaze sharpened, trying to peer into the soul of the woman I had become. I dodged his gaze. I had no desire to get tangled up with someone who had just stood by in my previous life as I died. Dad's grip tightened, and the wine glass shattered in his hand. That's enough. You're a woman of this family. Your job is to marry well and boost our influence. You think you have a choice? I held his stare, unwavering. I'm aware our business in New Cordova has been tanking for 3 months. I'll go there, expand our market, and pull us out of this mess. In my previous life, Dad had seized my inheritance from Mom to save the family, but ultimately, it all ended up with Juliana. She was living it up overseas, spending cash like she was royalty. Meanwhile, I was stuck in a musty basement, scrimping and saving every penny for Chester's medical bills. When things got really tough, I swallowed my pride and asked Juliana for a loan of 50 grand. However, she just laughed and had her goons give me a beating before tossing me out on the street. The doctor said Chester was 50 grand short for the surgery he needed, and without it, he would be crippled for life. So, I did the only thing I could. I sold my blood to scrape together the cash. However, even after all that, Chester could not muster up a bit of kindness for me. I had learned my lesson. Pouring my heart out to someone who did not care was just a waste of time. Given a second shot at life, I would not repeat my old mistakes. Thanks to Seth's backing, Dad finally caved to my request. I wiped Chester's number from my phone and hopped on a flight to New Cordova. The family business there acted like I was invisible, just another Juliana's shadow. However, I did not let it faze me. I let my work do the talking. Back in the day, I was too caught up in Chester's orbit to see my own knack for sealing deals. It did not take long after landing in New Cordova to lock down a big arms deal that had been on ice for ages, showing them all what I was made of. For the first time, the old guard looked at me with something like respect, and my name started to mean something. I had been done being Juliana's sidekick. Out of the blue, my dad, who had practically written me off, decided to give me a ring. However, when I picked up, all I got was an earful of yelling. Tanya, do you really think that growing up gives you the right to turn your back on your family? The anniversary of your mother's death is just around the corner. Why aren't you coming home? My mother was always the one I held closest to my heart. I had booked my ticket to return and honor her memory well in advance. On the anniversary of my mother's passing, Juliana was there waiting for me. Her smile was warm, but her eyes betrayed a thick layer of envy. Tanya, you've been pushing yourself so hard in New Cordova. However, a decent woman shouldn't be mingling with drug lords and hired guns. Rumors are flying that you're making a living on your back. You've disgraced Dad and stained our family's honor. Her eyes then darted to Chester, standing beside me, as if she had just had an epiphany. Now I see. All your efforts are just a ploy to snag a man's attention. That's why Dad sent me to tell you he's already picked out a fiancé for you. Starting tomorrow, you can forget about New Cordova. I'll be taking over there. It's time you stopped using those tactics that tarnish our family name. I kept my face blank, but inside, a wave of serenity washed over me. I worked for those contracts. You wouldn't know the first thing about them. And you expect me to just hand them over? Why should I? You really can't handle it now that I'm no longer your backdrop? Don't even think about snatching what's mine. I owe you nothing. Juliana had not seen my rejection coming. She shuddered, her eyes flickering with shock. However, she was quick to regain her composure, her tears and sobs returning. Tanya, I'm only thinking of you. How could you accuse me like this? I know you've always resented me for being the better one, but I only wanted to spare you the hardship. I had no patience left for her drama. I turned on my heel and walked away. Chester's grip was sudden and fierce as he caught me by the arm. This is too much, he said. I looked at his protective stance and smiled bitterly, though it was small enough. Say you're sorry to Juliana. He was still the same, domineering, unapologetic, forcing me to meet his eyes by tilting my chin up. I broke free from his grasp, finger by finger, and stepped back. Enough with the hero act, Mr. Savior. I don't need your drama, not here by my mother's grave. His hand hung in the air, motionless, as my cool defiance left him speechless. He probably never imagined I could look at him with such detachment. You. His voice was a raspy shadow of itself. I turned away, gathered my things, and left for New Cordova that night. However, before I could even get on the plane, Seth and Chester cornered me. Seth's grip on my neck was tight, his eyes wild with rage. You did this, he bellowed. Juliana tried to make a name for herself at the casino last night, got played, and lost everything. They're even talking about selling her off to settle her debts. She's stuck there now, and you're not going anywhere until we get her back. As we headed to the casino, Chester sighed. I know. You were reborn too. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Reborn or not, what difference does it make? Are you going to start playing favorites now? I'm sorry, he murmured, almost inaudible. I just shook my head, at a loss for words. Chester, is that all you've got after all this time? Out of nowhere, he pulled me close and kissed me senselessly. Tanya, he whispered, his forehead resting gently against mine, his voice a solemn vow. I promise, this is the last time you'll have to go through anything like this. We're just hitting the casino, dropping some cash to get your sister out of trouble. You'll be okay. And after that, I'll make you my wife. I'll spend every day making it up to you. I tried to smile, but my voice came out raspy. Chester, just one last question for you. Don't you see she's just playing us for attention? Chester paused, his eyes darting away from mine. I don't know. Not knowing or just playing dumb. Ridiculous. They all knew her game, yet I was shoved into the line of fire once more. The casino's VIP room was a world apart, dimly lit and muffled from the chaos outside by thick curtains. A mountain of debt slips and contract copies lay scattered across the gambling table. Juliana was a mess, tied to a couch by the window, her makeup ruined by tears, her eyes wild with fear and begging. Seth bolted to her side, his voice shaking. Juliana, are you okay? Hey, no one said you two could talk. The casino manager cut in, snapping his fingers. His goons stepped up, blocking Seth. Cut the crap. Pay up, or we'll take payment out of her hide. Chester's fists tightened. Through gritted teeth he asked, how much is she in for? $1 billion. It's all there in black and white, with your family's name on it. Not a penny less, said the manager, a cruel smile on his lips as he tapped the papers. Seth gasped. That much? They would never come up with that kind of money on the spot. At that moment, something in Seth snapped. He glanced from the damning pile of papers to me, a hint of madness creeping into his gaze. Tanya, too, is a Larson girl. Can't she just take Juliana's place? I froze. In that instant, all eyes were on me. What nonsense are you spouting? Chester's voice rumbled low. Seth scoffed as if it was the most natural thing in the world. If Tanya hadn't gone out of her way to shame Juliana, do you think she'd have stormed off to this place? Juliana's the innocent one here. It's only fair that Tanya stays. No sooner had he spoken than the casino manager chuckled. Well, that's interesting. If she's a Larson, that works too. She looks healthy. Her womb would sell for a higher price. Chester's face twisted in anger. Absolutely not. However, Juliana's cries tore through the room. Chester? I can't die. Please, you have to save me. Chester's resolve flickered. His hands balled into fists. At last, he turned to me, his voice careful, almost pleading. Tanya, you don't want to see your sister get hurt. Just stay put, okay? I'll go back, get the money, and I'll come for you as fast as I can. It was as if my blood turned to ice, and a twisted smile, more grotesque than any sob, crept onto my face. Chester, are you serious? You're going to leave me here to take her back? In Chester's eyes, I saw a storm of guilt, struggle, and a conflict so profound it seemed bottomless. Tanya, he whispered, I'll come back for you. That's a promise. Seth's frown was like a line etched in stone. His voice brooked no argument. What's the big deal? You just have to wait for us to get the money together. Juliana's been waiting, so why can't you? Could Juliana hold out for a hero? What was left for me to hope for? As the goons held me down, I clung to Chester's wrist with the last ounce of my strength. Chester, are you really going to stand by and watch me lose my womb again? He reached out as if to save me. However, Juliana lunged, breaking his grasp and tearing my hand away. Chester, I was terrified. Let's just go home. I can't bear another second here. The conflict in his eyes vanished as he took Juliana's hand. I know it's not fair to you, but Juliana can't lose her chance at motherhood. She's always dreamed of having her child. I could not help but smirk. So you sacrifice me instead? You'll be okay, he said quickly, maybe to convince himself. I'll get the money, and once you're out, we'll get married right away. The door slammed shut behind them, and the room fell silent once more. The debt papers vanished from the table, replaced by 2 flutes of champagne. I gestured, and the soldiers, disguised as thugs, respectfully backed away. Any sign of my earlier vulnerability was gone, replaced by an icy resolve. Keep the plan moving, I commanded. The soldier nodded, took the family ring I handed him, and crushed the chip that monitored vital signs. The message, "Tanya is dead," would soon echo through the family ranks. The casino manager toasted me with a knowing smile. Looking forward to working together, Lady Queen. From that moment, Tanya ceased to exist. In her place stood a revenger, ready to strike fear into their hearts. The news of my death hit the Larson family like a nuclear bomb. I watched it unfold from the safety of my new office in the heart of New Cordova, a city that pulsed with neon lights and dark secrets. The screens on my wall displayed the live feed from the Larson estate. My father, Don Larson, was staring at the shattered remains of the life monitoring ring, his face a mask of disbelief. Juliana was sobbing theatrically into a handkerchief, while Seth paced the room like a caged animal. And Chester? Chester sat in his wheelchair, a prop he had resumed using after my death, staring blankly at the wall. He looked like a man who had lost his soul. Again. Excellent performance, I murmured, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. They bought it hook, line, and sinker, said Marco, my second in command and the man who had played the casino manager. The transfer of the Larson assets in the southern region has already begun. They're panicking, liquefying everything to pay off the debt that killed you. Good. Let them bleed. I wasn't Tanya anymore. I was the queen, a shadow figure who had risen from the underworld of New Cordova. In the 3 months since my death, I had consolidated power, leveraging the contacts I made during my previous life struggles, and the insights from my rebirth. I knew where the bodies were buried because, in another timeline, I had buried them myself. My plan was simple: dismantle the Larson empire piece by piece, expose Juliana's fraudulent existence, and force Chester and Seth to face the consequences of their choices. But first, I needed to make an appearance. The anniversary of my mother's death, and now, ironically, my own, was approaching. The Larsons were holding a grand memorial service. It was a PR stunt, of course, designed to show the underworld that the family was united in grief, hiding the fact that they were hemorrhaging money and influence. Prepare the jet, Marco, I said, setting down my glass. We're going to a funeral. The rain in the city was relentless, matching the somber mood of the attendees dressed in black. The Larson estate was draped in mourning ribbons. I arrived in a convoy of black SUVs, wearing a veil that obscured my face. I wasn't on the guest list, but no one stops a woman who walks with an army behind her. As I entered the grand hall, the murmurs began. Who was this mysterious figure? A new rival? A creditor? I walked straight to the front, where 2 portraits stood, my mother's and mine. Juliana was at the podium, delivering a eulogy. My sister Tanya. She was troubled. Juliana wept, dabbing her eyes. She made poor choices. She got involved with dangerous people. We tried to save her, but her ambition was her undoing. Lies. Even in death, she slandered me to protect her image. It's a tragedy, she continued. But we must be strong. As the sole heir now, I promised to carry on her legacy. Is that so? My voice cut through the hall, amplified by the silence that followed. Juliana froze. Chester's head snapped up. I slowly lifted my veil. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I had changed my appearance. My hair was shorter, dyed a stark white blonde, my makeup sharp and fierce, but the eyes were unmistakable. Tanya. Seth whispered, his face draining of color. Not quite, I said, stepping onto the dais. Tanya died in a basement, gutted for her womb, because you were too cowardly to save her. I am what's left. You're alive, Chester cried, trying to stand up from his wheelchair, his legs shaking. Tanya, I got the money. I went back. Did you? I asked coolly. Or did you wait until the signal stopped pinging? I turned to the crowd, addressing the rival families and business partners. You all know the Larsons. You know their reputation. But do you know their finances? I snapped my fingers. Marco stepped forward and projected a hologram into the center of the room. It showed the Larson family accounts drained. It showed the billion-dollar debt to the casino, a shell company I owned. It showed Juliana's gambling records, her secret abortions in Switzerland, her payoffs to fixers. Juliana Larson isn't the saint she pretends to be, I announced. She's a liability. And her fiancés? They traded a competent heir for a parasite. Lies. Juliana shrieked, her composure shattering. Kill her. Someone kill her. But no one moved. The guards were loyal to the highest bidder, and I had bought them all hours ago. You have 24 hours to vacate the estate, I told my father, who looked like he was having a stroke. The Larson empire belongs to the queen now. I walked out, leaving chaos in my wake. The fallout was instantaneous. The Larson stock plummeted. Their allies abandoned them like rats fleeing a sinking ship. My father was ousted by the board of directors, a board I had secretly infiltrated over the past month. Chester and Seth were desperate. They showed up at my headquarters in New Cordova a week later, begging for an audience. I let them wait in the lobby for 6 hours before calling them up. When they entered my office, they looked disheveled. The arrogance was gone. Tanya, Chester started, his voice cracking. Please, we can fix this. I love you. I always loved you. Love. I laughed, swiveling in my chair. You watched me die in a previous life, Chester. You knew I was reborn. And yet, you still chose her. You still gambled with my life. Chester fell to his knees. I was scared. She was pregnant. In the last life. The baby. There was no baby, I revealed, dropping a file on the desk. Juliana was never pregnant in the last life. It was a pillow. A ploy to secure her position. Chester's eyes widened in horror. What? She was barren, Chester. From a botched surgery years ago. She played you. She played all of us. I turned to Seth. And you. The childhood friend. You pushed me into that life. You told them to take me. Seth was trembling. She told me you hated me. She said you laughed at me behind my back. And you believed her because you're weak, I said. Both of you are weak men dazzled by a pretty lie. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city I now owned. I'm not going to kill you, I said softly. That would be too easy. I want you to live. I want you to watch Juliana for who she really is. What do you mean? Chester asked. I've cut off her funds. I've blocked her cards. She has nothing but you two. Let's see how long true love lasts when the money runs out. I was right. It didn't take long. Without the Larson fortune, Juliana revealed her true colors. She moved into Seth's apartment. Chester's assets were frozen by his own family once they realized the Larson alliance was worthless. I had surveillance in the apartment. I watched the feeds like a soap opera. Day 1. Juliana crying, demanding caviar. Seth trying to comfort her with takeout. She threw the noodles in his face. Day 7. Juliana screaming at Chester on the phone, calling him a cripple, a loser, a waste of space. Chester, for the first time, arguing back. Day 14. The breaking point. Juliana tried to sell Seth's family heirlooms to buy a ticket to Monaco. Seth caught her. You thief. Seth screamed, grabbing her wrist. After everything I sacrificed for you. I gave up Tanya for you. Tanya was a dog. Juliana spat. She was born to serve me. And you're just a stepping stone. Seth slapped her. It was the first time violence entered their paradise. Then Chester rolled in. He had discharged himself from the hospital where he was feigning illness to garner sympathy. I heard everything, Chester said quietly. You weren't pregnant? In the last life? Juliana froze. Who told you that? Tanya. She showed me the medical records. And you believe that bitch over me? She has no reason to lie anymore, Chester said. She won. You lost. Juliana laughed, a manic, ugly sound. I never lose. I still have you two idiots wrapped around my finger. She grabbed a knife from the counter. One of you is going to get me money. Now. Or I'll tell the police you kidnapped me. It was a standoff. The 3 people who had ruined my life, now tearing each other apart in a dingy apartment. I decided it was time for the finale. I sent an invitation. To the Larson family and associates. You are cordially invited to the wedding of the century. Groom. The new king of the underworld. Bride. The queen. It was a trap, of course. There was no groom. I was marrying myself to the empire. They came because they had no choice. They hoped for mercy. They hoped for a crumb of power. The venue was the old Larson estate, now refurbished in black and gold. My father sat in the back, a broken old man. Juliana, Seth, and Chester stood near the front, looking like ghosts. I walked down the aisle alone, wearing a gown made of crimson silk that looked like flowing blood. I stood at the altar and turned to face them. We are gathered here today, I said, my voice echoing, to witness the end of an era. Juliana Larson, I called out. She stepped forward, defiant to the end. She was wearing a dress she had stolen, the tag still tucked in the back. You wanted to be the center of attention, I said. So be it. The screens behind me lit up. They played the footage from the apartment. Juliana admitting she was never pregnant. Juliana calling Seth and Chester stepping stones. Juliana admitting she poisoned our mother years ago to get her inheritance early. The crowd gasped. The police commissioner, who was in attendance and on my payroll, stood up. Juliana Larson, you are under arrest for the murder of Elena Larson. No. Juliana screamed. It's a fake. Tanya made it up. But the evidence was undeniable. As the cuffs clicked around her wrists, she looked at Chester and Seth. Help me. Don't just stand there. Chester looked away. Seth spat on the ground. Take her, Seth said. As Juliana was dragged away, screaming curses, I turned to the two men. And now for you too. I walked down the steps. Seth, you betrayed your childhood friend for a chance at power. Your punishment is simple. You will work for me. In the mines of New Cordova. You will start at the bottom, just like I did. Seth bowed his head. Yes, Queen. And Chester? I stopped in front of him. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Tanya, is there any chance? No, I said. But I will give you a gift. I will give you the truth. I leaned in close. In the last life, when you saved her, you didn't just save her. You killed our child. I was pregnant, Chester. With your baby. It was a lie. Or maybe it wasn't. In the chaos of memories, who could tell? But it was the knife that would twist in his heart forever. Chester screamed. A sound of pure agony. He fell out of his wheelchair, clawing at the floor. I didn't know. I didn't know. Ignorance is not an excuse, I whispered. Live with it. The years passed. New Cordova flourished under my rule. The crime rate dropped because I organized it. The chaos was controlled. Seth worked in the mines for 5 years before he died in a collapse. He saved 3 people before he went down. Perhaps he found redemption in the dark. Chester ended up in a sanitarium. He spent his days rocking back and forth, muttering apologies to a child that never existed. And Juliana? She rotted in prison. I sent her photos of my success every year on her birthday. She died of a stroke at 40, forgotten by everyone but me. I never married. I didn't need to. I had my empire. I had my power. One night, I stood on the balcony of the Larson estate, looking at the moon. Are you happy? Marco asked, handing me a glass of wine. Happy. I swirled the wine. Happiness is for people who don't know how cruel the world is. I am satisfied. I am safe. And I am free. I raised my glass to the stars. To Tanya, I whispered. The girl who had to die so the queen could live. I drank the wine. It tasted like victory. And somewhere in the echo of time, the old Tanya smiled. She was finally at peace.